Well, welcome back. I hope you were well. Uh, Today is Friday, and as I do my best to conclude the sessions that I began 2 days ago, during which the conversation was directed at men, let me start by welcoming you. Thank you for returning. Um, for those who haven't subscribed, please feel free to. Um, and more than anything, perhaps an engagement um, will be, I think, will be highly valuable. Uh, Whether you agree or you disagree, the feedback always helps. Now, let me start today's session with a slight recap on what we discussed yesterday. In yesterday's session, I guess the theme was that it was important for you as a man to begin with the end in mind. Irrespective of your endeavors, if you want to be successful, the pathway rests and lies in starting from the end and with the end in mind, and then coming back and then effectively executing a plan that takes you from where you are to where you wish to arrive. I also talked about that one of the reasons that strategy works is because for success in relationships to be within reach, there's an understanding that there is someone else on the opposite side. And in order for you to have your dreams or your goals fulfilled, you also have to ensure that the other person's goals are fulfilled. The intersection between both parties is where you have some form of synergy, some form of agreement. And that's so, therefore, when you've made a choice of all of the things you wish to have in a significant other, understand that there is a face behind that and a person behind that description. And they have needs and they have wants. And if you try to understand what they want and what they need, it becomes easy to understand what you have to give in order for fair exchange to take place. That was at the core of what we discussed yesterday. There was also something I mentioned, perhaps worthy of reiterating. Beauty, youth, attractiveness, and the ability to reproduce and take your seeds as a man into the next generation comes with a price tag. It comes with a cost. It's not free. Sex is a commodity. Sex these days are given away for free without any value. However, when it comes to relationships and relationships where you are either married, cohabiting, or something significant for the long term, you have to understand that there is a price to pay. The currency of exchange is normally in your ability to provide. Pounds, dollars, over time. However, there are some people who require a different currency of exchange, a combination of various currencies of exchange. Now, I talked about the 4 P's: provision, protection, the priestly duties, and your ability to profess your love. Now, with the last one, we tend to find that in the modern West, women these days want, in addition to all the traditional providing attributes of a man, they want a man who has the ability to profess his love by his presence, by his words, by his actions, someone who has the whole package, not just character, but also someone who has the package of humor, someone who is well schooled, someone who is actually well seasoned, someone who's open to various interests in life. These are currencies of exchange. In any case, in order to guarantee or give yourself, well, in a finite universe, there are no guarantees, especially when you're dealing with people, because guarantees are not compatible with freedom. I would say instead, in the universe that we find ourselves, in order for your dreams to be fulfilled, it's important to make yourself fully rounded in all the potential P areas: provision, protection, priestly duties, and your ability to profess your love. Firstly, by your presence. That was what we discussed yesterday. A long recap, but I think it's necessary, because what I want to talk about today are about 3 or 4 different topic areas. Let me start. I'll give you a summary of the areas that I think may be of interest, and perhaps a key moments to put a footnote to in today's session. The first is what I call the burden of performance. Number 2 is the obstacles that will be in your way. Number 3, in many ways applies, or I describe it as follows: the masculine frame or the feminine frame, and then finally, making the right decisions. Now, I'll try to cover all of the 4 before today's session is over, but let me start with the first. Now, this might be controversial for women who hear this first statement, but in any case, it is true in its absoluteness. Men do not have the same, what I might call privilege that women have in society. And let me qualify that and expand on that slightly. The burden of performance expected of men far exceeds, in multiples, what is expected of a woman. A woman can actually go through life as a failure. Now, she can go from failure after failure after failure after failure, and wait at the finish line, and providing she's not hideous, and providing she's not of a type that is, what we would classify as a troublesome woman, she will be found and she'll be provided for. Society expects very little from women. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the feminist movement and the empowerment movement, and actually a lot of modern women these days who are required to make something of themselves. Notwithstanding, there is almost a zero burden of performance on women for several reasons. And therefore, women, generally speaking, go through life almost in a daze, almost as though they're in a dream state, never getting past gear 2 or gear 1, but still having the ability to have their core needs met. Now, this should not be difficult to understand. The world we live in was created and built by men. This is a man's world in a very, very practical statement. We built this world, and if you go through time over the past 13,000 years, every single empire, every single nation, every single, you might say, community of people that stood the test of time was built, conquered by men, maintained by men. The land we stand in, the great island, Great Britain, this is the land of the Anglo-Saxons. But before the Anglo-Saxons, we had the Normans, we had the Vikings, we had the Saxons, we had the Germanic tribes. If you go back to the dark or the early ages, what you find is that there's been a journey through thousands of years of achievement by men, expanding, dreaming, expanding their boundaries for the sake of actually extending their wealth, conquering, sacrificing their lives, building, maintaining. Women have therefore been more the beneficiaries of said conquests and creations. There's never been a burden on women to go out and perform. So much so that there has never been an empire led by women, managed by women, controlled by women, established by women, that has stood the test of time. It's quite simple. When it comes to the art of violence, men are able to play that game much more. And therefore, when it came to conquering, men understand. We are very, very close to our animal extended family, men are. Women are slightly more detached, which is why women are more emotional, feelings-based, and nurturing. Men are more able to think logically, think about providing, think about protection. It's partly why a man can go out into the wilderness alone, recognizing that he might get killed, recognizing that you might say that whilst he's trying to find food for the family, he's being hunted at the same time that he is hunting. But still, he can overcome those fears, not think about the fears, move off his emotions and feelings, and move into logic because he understands the burden of performance. Now, I say all of that not to discredit the value of women, no. I say all of that to make it clear that the world that we have lived in, and the world as it has been from the start, can be inhabited by men without women being present. The only issue will be we never get to reproduce and have our loins or have our genes move to the next generation. But we can maintain what we created. And over time, thousands and thousands of years, we have. We need, we want women, but we do not need women to survive. We want women, but we do not need women to survive. We need women to be able to reproduce and carry forward our genes into the next world. Now, the reverse is not the same. Women cannot survive without men for an extended length of time because they do not have the history, they do have the competence, they do have the ability, but they do not have the knowledge, the understanding that it requires to maintain, control, manipulate, adjust the environment, the habitats, until the learning and the wisdom have developed. In other words, if you remove every single man from the world today and left the world just with women, in my opinion, I genuinely do not believe that women will last beyond 25 years. I think 25 is a generous position. The reason I would extend it to 25 is because in part of the developed world, there are some infrastructures that have been designed in such a way that they can operate for about 10 to 15 years without 100% failure. You might have 20, 25, 30, 50% failure, but there are redundancies designed into the system. So for example, our utility networks, water, gas, electricity, and all of the various infrastructures that supply all of those facilities and systems, they have redundancies. So they might operate for 15 years before they start to fail. 25 years is a stretch. I'm being very generous. And at the point where the systems start to fail, you find that women start to die. It's simple. This is not a comparison between men and women. It's simply a biological fact. You look at our hand strength, you look at our bone density, you look at the ability and our interests in terms of we having an interest in technology and things and creating. We are very different from women. Women cannot survive 25 years into the future if you removed every single man in the universe. They would all die. Because the same, remember, you have to understand something. In addition to manipulating the environment, there is also the issue about survival. The instinct to fight, to keep away any predators, both those who are extended families of our kingdom, mammals and animals. They have to do all of that. They have to do the provision, the protection, and the manipulation of all of the infrastructure that has been created. They cannot do that. Now, if you remove all the women from the universe, every single one of them, well, men will not be able to reproduce. Men will have sex. They may not have sex with the ones they choose to, but they will have sex. They'll have that need met in whatever means they choose. But here's the key thing. Because we designed and we maintain currently the infrastructure, it will be the same as another day in the office. We'll carry on maintaining the infrastructure that we've always had, and we'll teach our younger ones, younger men, what to do when the older ones do not have the same strength. The point of the whole conversation is as simple as this. We cannot, as men, choose the pathway of women. We just cannot. The performance expectations required of men are so extreme, partly because that is the path that we have been given. It's not a choice. There's a frame you've been given. Stress is built for the shoulders you have as men. You carry that burden, you carry that cross all the way up the hill. Along the way, you look for another man who can help you should you get tired. That is the performance burden of men. We don't have the option of being lazy, of refusing to take the mantle, or of even selling our birthright. The burden of performance is so strong that we cannot sell it to another person. Now, I went through that whole explanations to make a point, which is to say as follows. If you can understand that the burden of performance for men is much higher, and that there is no one waiting for you at the finish line, and that your value comes as a result of your resourcefulness over time, rather than value being given to you, then one of the first things that comes to your mind as a man is failure is not an option, and that you will fail your way to success if you have to. And when you come across failure, you will keep going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm, because you cannot afford to fail as a man. Period. You just cannot. I don't know why I use that word. I'm going to use for written English, but anyway, I guess the word I detest so much, it has finally come out of my head. Anyway, the point of the matter is, if you understand that the call to adventure, the blueprint and the promise for you, the man, has been made available, then it encourages you not to be lazy, but to take on that burden of performance with pleasure. As a man, you cannot wait at the finish line for someone to choose you as a spouse. If you did so, your value remains at zero. You see, women are born with their value, and this is a biological statement. Anyone who is an experienced doctor will tell you, at 18, or a woman, the younger she is, whenever that time begins, she has a fixed quantity of eggs. The quality and the quantity of eggs begins to decline over time. So at 18, she might have the most possible. Sometimes it starts before 18, but at 35, going up to 40, suddenly she has the lowest quantity at 40 compared to 18, and the quality declines. She's given everything she has. Nature has done that, not biology alone, nature. In addition to that, the beauty, the youth comes early. A woman is given all of her value inherently. Now, what she has to do is ensure that she has a system of maintenance in place, preventative maintenance and scheduled maintenance to preserve the value she's been given. In addition to that, she then must make the right decisions very fast at the right time in order not to lose all of that value. A man, on the other hand, is born with just potential. At 18, all you have is potential. If you do nothing with your life, at 38, all you will have is just potential. But instead, you will be an old man who's failed, but who had potential. Quite sad, really, but true. This is a long-winded explanation, but I think it's very important you understand as a man. In order for you to have success in your relationships, you have to understand that the responsibility is on you, irrespective of where you are in life. At 18, the responsibility is on you. At 35, the responsibility is on you. At 70, the responsibility is on you. You were the one who was given the responsibility. Now, this brings me to the second part of today's conversation, which is the obstacles that are in your way. If you can accept as a man that not only is the burden of performance yours to carry, not only do you have to carry that cross without complaining, without explaining, but if you can also accept that along the pathway, there will be snakes, there will be holes, there will be obstacles, there will be things that are there in order to stop you from reaching your potential. And that you have to accept all of the vicissitudes during the journey like a man. You don't complain, you don't explain, and you move forward with enthusiasm. Now, this is only possible if certain decisions are made early. Now, let me talk about a few things. Younger men these days, 18 and over, usually from between 14 and 18, certainly before college years, spend a lot of their time playing video games and watching porn. That is a problem. To put it very, very frankly, that is an issue, because not only are you're building yourself into becoming a monster, both emotionally and psychologically, you're also wasting your time and the best youthful years of your life on things that perhaps add nothing to your life, but instead subtract from your life. You become socially awkward. You become an introvert. Relational muscles are dead. And therefore, you find yourself to see women as simply objects. You spend a huge part of your time and on games, shooting things and attacking things and killing things, and women are seen as objects. Then you see porn and simply have this idea that they can be utilized in whatever sexual fantasy experience that comes to your mind. And that is not the real world. Now, I said in one of the earlier sessions, just imagine your sister or your mother being objectified in the same way. That should give you some sympathy about how you look and treat women. But in any case, the early stages of a young man's life begins with wasting that potential he has on video games, on porn, on just being bored. He then transitions at 18 into college, having no experience, having not studied, having no understanding about relationships, but even not really understanding himself. Men are driven, generally speaking, the younger they are, by what I call 3 S's: sex, sports, and, unfortunately, this is a fascinating one, sex becomes so strong, and sports starts to diminish, which is partly why you can find a lot of young men these days are not really into physical activities. Quite happy to sit down and play a video game and watch several entertainment shows, rather than go and join the football club and the volleyball team and the basketball team and taekwondo team and swimming team. And younger men are becoming more and more useless compared to their ancestral lineage. Sex is the motivation. At 18, you're therefore, you have this horny part of you that drives you, but you don't have the knowledge. So what you find is, and here is perhaps where I start to give some advice about the obstacles. One obstacle I've mentioned already: games, porn, social media, the interconnectivity on this digital platform and digital platforms that exist. The second is actually women. But it's not necessarily women per se, it's the image you've developed in your mind and the lack of control you have of the self. Sex is such a powerful motivation that men will do anything just for sex. But if you haven't been schooled or taught how to have sex and the protocols of sex, you can find yourself in one of three lanes. Number one, you haven't developed the social skills and your relational muscles are non-existent. Therefore, you go down the pathway of not knowing when no means no. So you go down the path of rape, and that destroys your entire life. Your entire potential out the window. Number two, you go down the path where you're controlled by your loins. You're controlled by what hangs between your legs. So much so that that becomes your focus. Your dream is put aside, your goals are tossed away, and all you think about is sex and how many women you can sleep with, and bragging about that to your young friends. Idiotic in my opinion. Number three, you fall into the trap that most men fall into, which is you meet a woman who is gorgeous at 18, at the peak of her prime. You, on the other hand, you have nothing, just potential. The balance of power rests in her hand, but you feel because she has chosen you and given herself to you, that means you've won the lottery. You're stupid enough, unwise enough to get her pregnant. There goes your dream. So, if you cannot control some of these issues, what controls your attention controls your life. Now, the third obstacle could be that you haven't actually fallen into any of the three traps. It's not rape. It's not the desire for multiple sex partners. And you haven't got someone pregnant. It could just be you decide you've fallen in love and you want to start a relationship at 19 and 20, too early. You always have to sacrifice something. Most people will sacrifice their dreams, their goals, their vision, and the opportunity to fail an apprentice under someone. I have said before, you should avoid relationships, mono relationships, long-term relationships, until about 35. Now, I'll talk about the age of 35 in the sessions that may follow. But let me go a step further and say, at this particular stage, the woman controls the man because she has the highest value. The man is scared about losing her. And for some reason, he does everything he thinks is necessary to keep her. Such as saying, why don't we move in together? Suddenly, at 20, you live with a woman. You're still a boy. You have absolutely no experience of life. You've put your dreams and your goals and work secondary to woman, and therefore you find you never go past first or second gear. Why? Because you become complicit in your destiny, but also you become content with where you find yourself. You're quite happy to satisfy all of her desires and needs. In other words, you become useless. To put it very bluntly, you become useless. Now, recognize that everything I've given you so far are choices. Choices come with costs, they come with constraints, they come with consequences, and there will always be trade-offs. There are no solutions. Now, you might be thinking, well, why don't I do A and B? No, you have to trade something off. There's a trade-off. Sacrifice means giving up something of a lower nature to gain something of a higher nature. Now let me say this very slowly and very carefully, because I think if you can just hold on to the statement that I am about to make, you will find that there is almost nothing that you cannot do when it comes to being successful as a young man. Now let me state the pre-qualification again. Sacrifice means giving up something of a lower nature to obtain something of a higher nature. As a young man, there is no sacrifice with regards to women between the age of 18 or lower and the age of 30, in my opinion. During that period of time, my preference is 18 to 35, 18 years. You were giving up something of a higher nature for something of a lower nature. Guaranteed. Now, take this to the bank. Now, I'm going to say that again, in case you perhaps need to hear it again. Sacrifice means giving up something of a lower nature to get something of a higher nature. To put in philosophical or scientific terms, energy must move from a higher to a lower. Energy cannot move from a lower to a higher. So when you sacrifice something, you're trying to ascend, not descend. But as a young man, pre-18, including 18 years to 35 years, with regards to women, you were sacrificing something of a higher nature for something of a lower nature. I can almost guarantee you with absoluteness the potential you have within you, the dreams you're capable of achieving, the goals you can acquire, the wealth you can create, the foundations you must build in order to have success in any area of your life, far exceed what lies between a woman's legs, the comfort of a woman, or what she says to you in the same period of time. As a matter of fact, as a man ages, he has more of what women want because he's had the opportunity to convert his potential to his actual. Therefore, women desire men more the older we are, all things remaining equal, because we've had the opportunity to create, so we can provide, we can protect, we can profess, and we can be the priestly saints that the woman and the family needs. As we age, therefore, we ascend into our position. So we must give up something of a lower nature to get something of a higher nature. Women, on the other hand, as they age, they lose more of what men want: beauty, attractiveness, youth, fertility, decorum, servanthood, the ability to be serene. They lose that. So, on a balance of probabilities, men and women are playing two separate games. A woman's responsibility is to consolidate as early as possible the best value available when it comes to available men and suitors. A man's game is to delay all of those decisions until he is ready. 35 is my time. 2, 35, 3 and 5. If you can memorize that number and simply decide, when it comes to women, you will not make any of the mistakes I have outlined so far. Now let me put this to you in a very more succinct and a very direct manner. Let me give you my tenets. They're very simple. Between 18 years and 35, and this begins before 18. Between 18 and 35, here are some tenets you should always follow. Number 1, your purpose, your dream, your goal, your vision is primacy. It's the most important thing in your life. I don't care if you give up half your life to see half that dream. Do it. The primacy is your dreams, your purpose, your goals, your calling. Attached to that, second primacy is work. That work will come in 2 parts. The younger you are, 18 to 23, is education, becoming your best self. And it should be in STEM or any other derivative of STEM. Forget the humanities completely. Those are useless degrees, completely useless degrees. You need to be in a position where you can create. Now, I talked about the infrastructure that we've created in this world. You need to be able to maintain those. Now, I don't believe too much in finance because finance is fairly easy. Most finance is about, in my opinion, moving money from one place to another. Nothing is being created. I believe in production, invention, creation. You do that with STEM, science, engineering, technology, math. You need those. Now, being a doctor and being a dentist, we need those. Being a lawyer, being an accountant, we need those. Those fall within the same umbrella. But going into professions where you start to study things like English and any of the humanities is useless. I'll go back to my statement. Your purpose, your dream, your goal, primacy, number 1. Number 2 is work. At the early stage, that work is represented through education. You need to be aiming to be the best person in the classroom. From 23 and above, or whenever you start working, work becomes your second primacy. Your work and your purpose are not synonymous. It's the different things. Sometimes your work is your preparation ground for your ultimate purpose. Work is where you're provided with security so you can actually apprentice and learn while someone else pays for your time. It's an opportunity for you to network, meet people, make friends, and start to incubate that dream you have. Number 2 is your work. Number 3, the tenant. Do not get any woman pregnant. Always wear a condom. Very simple. Do not get any woman pregnant. Do not get any woman pregnant. And that includes giving out your sperm. Number 4, do not move in with a woman until 35. Do not live with a woman until 35. Do not get married until at least 35. You can start considering any of those 3 from 30 onwards. But prior to 35, stay focused, laser focused. Let me go through these because these are simple principles. Focus on your dreams, nurture those dreams and goals and purpose. Finish your education and get a job. Learn under someone. Now I talk about it in specific timelines. 18 to 22, 5 years, you're studying. 23, if you can, you need 10,000 hours, 2,000 work hours every single year. That would mean you need 5 years to get your 10,000 hours. Men have a way of doing things seldom in a straight line. So I give you an extra, call it 20%, to accommodate your failures or perhaps your lack of focus. That's an extra year. So we'll go from 23 all the way 6 years to 29. We put an extra 1 year at the end for consolidation. At 30, you have gained education, your 10,000 hours of practice. So you are good at something and you started to build wealth, but you haven't failed. The most important part of your life is the failure, not the success, not the building. The job gives you security. Failure gives you freedom and certainty. You need about half the time that it takes just to fail, to try things. My preference is 5 years. The same time it took for you to apprentice, if you can dedicate that time to trying something. Now, for you, it might be 3 years. Split the difference, 2.5 years. 30 to 32.5. But I don't believe that it takes 2.5 years to actually fail enough. Sometimes people have to start businesses 4 or 5 times before actually succeeds. 5 years is the time that it takes for you to go out to the wilderness, get your temptations through, go out to the wilderness, fail, try things, but also allow the shoulders of yours to develop, to grow, so that you can bear the pressure when the family arrives. That takes you to 35. Now from 35, you're an adult, in my opinion. You can make your decisions. Now I don't have an issue with beginning the process of vetting for a wife from 30, but I strictly refuse to accept moving in with a woman before 30, and actually ideally before 35. You need to learn how to love yourself. You need to learn who you are. Many of you young men are useless. Let me say very directly. You've been raised by very, very feminine mothers who've made you into feminine replicas. In the modern West, what we see these days are men who were made to be soft and women who were made to be hard. Mothers treated their sons like the husbands they should have had, and they brainwashed you into thinking you should be soft and kind and funny and witty and everything should be 50-50. In other words, she clipped your wings. She said, you see that wilderness? It's 50-50. Don't go there alone. Do that with a woman and respect a woman. Just completely useless. Most men were raised to be beta males, or beta males as we call it. Why? Because most men were raised by women. There weren't men in the house, so they lacked boundary enforcement, discipline, decision making, focus, rough and tumble play, delayed gratification, sacrifice, placing the family first, and where there was a man in the family, the same man was raised potentially by a baby boomer, by a mother who feminized him. So you either find men being raised by single mothers, taught to think like women, their software is feminine, their hardware is masculine, and therefore they don't understand the call to adventure. Or where there are fathers, the fathers are just as useless. Most modern men between 18 and 35 are useless, absolutely useless. So the reason you're doing all of these and you're staying away from women, in many ways, is to decontaminate from all of the training you've actually had most of your life. Now, I'll give you a good example, and I'm going on, and I should bring this to a close in about 2 or 3 minutes. Here's an observation, true story. And let me see if I can change the names, just in case. This particular example involves a couple, and they have kids. My very first observation of meeting the boy was the first. The mother stayed at home and raised the child. And I noticed that she always talked to the son. Now, you might be thinking about this and saying, what's the problem with talking to your son? But it wasn't just the talk, it was the talk that women, she can talk to the boy for 18 hours of the day. Remember, he was always with her. He went from about 2 or 3 months, she started talking to him perfectly fine. When he approached 1 year, she kept talking to him, and she would always ask him about how he felt, how are you feeling? And even whilst driving the car, she was conversing with him as though she was talking to someone who was an adult, her husband, obviously who was working. Now, you might be thinking, big deal. Now, stay with me. Let's fast forward. She continued that until the second child arrived, 3 years later. When the second child arrived, it was a girl. She now had 2 kids. But she spent 3 years talking to this boy like a woman. Always. At about 4, that's when it occurred to me that something was wrong. If you placed him next to another boy, and actually when he stood next to his sister, she was very stoic. Talk about raising your sons to be soft and daughters to be hard. When you saw the 2 kids in the family, the young girl was very stoic, very matured, focused, ate her food, finished the food, took her plate away. The boy couldn't stop talking. He would talk all the way through dinner until he went to bed. He wasn't acting like a boy. And my first observation is, I said to my beloved, I said, this has to stop. He has to be conditioned out of that training initially. And the mother never did that maliciously. She just enjoyed his company, but also was trying to get him involved with her daily experiences and ensure that he didn't feel lonely. Remember, women are motivated by nurturing and love. Love does not get the job done. So far, the boy has come out to be a very, very loving boy, intelligent boy, very attractive young man. But his software is more feminine than masculine. He wants to play in ways that are not really masculine. But he won't stop talking. It's fascinating when you're with him. I'm thinking, this is strange because boys don't talk this much. And his sister is stoic and doesn't say anything. And she's actually fully independent. Here's the key thing. He was conditioned to depend on his mother so much that even at 4, he can't make decisions without running back to mum to say, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about this? Women, you're raising your sons to be soft and your daughters to be hard. Now, it doesn't matter. Let's go back to the conversation I started with, and let me bring this to a summary. The point being, the decisions you make as a man between 18 and 35 will decide your success or your failure. But most importantly, some decisions were made before you. Now, I was saying something about decontaminating. That 18-year period is a period for you to decontaminate and let go of the feminine frame and cling onto the masculine frame, which means you need to be around other men who can hold you accountable. You need to be in places of success. So, for example, I am pro young women, for example, those who, let's just say, for the sake of argument, you're from a small village in Scotland, 5,000 people, and you are a young woman, and you have a brother. I am pro, when you turn 18, stay with family until you are found. But I support men leaving the house and going out to the wilderness, go to Edinburgh, go to Glasgow, go to London, go to Manchester, go to a bigger town or city where you can be challenged, where you can have opportunities to be around people who will motivate you and inspire you into greatness. You have to be careful because you also find distractions. The point being, the burden of performance is so high on men. You cannot afford to play the same game as women. You cannot afford to fail. So you need 18 years to decontaminate, and sometimes leaving the family, breaking away, and developing an identity which is not mother's identity or father's identity only. You want to keep what they've taught you, no doubt. But you need to develop yourself into the man that you should be, so that when the family comes, you're able to support the family in your priestly duties. Now, the last thing is decisions. I'll leave you with the following statements. Decisions create success. Decisions create wealth. Decisions create prosperity. Decisions. Now, if you cannot make good decisions, let me give you a formula that always works. Ask questions. Ask questions relentlessly. Ask questions all the time, and seek people who can answer those questions. Start with the silly questions and develop the ability to ask questions intelligently until you start asking intelligent questions. But ask. 3-letter word, A-S-K. Ask, seek, knock. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will open up unto you. At 18, you know nothing. Now, I can't talk about it now, but I'll do it in another session. At 18, you know nothing. Don't live life based on your experience. Find people who are 30 years and 35 and ask questions and live based on their answers. But make sure you're crowdsourcing all of that knowledge to make sure you're not relying on one person's experience only. Combine those who have failed and those who have succeeded, and have about 10 people. And then look for the best fit line. We call it the regression line or the through line, and choose the answers and apply those answers. As you move from 18, as you move towards 30, now you can be in a position whereby you can rely probably about 30% of your decisions on your experience. From 35, 50% of your decisions on your experience. In my experience, until you get to 40 and above, you know absolutely nothing. Believe me, when you hit 40, 45, that's when you realize how little you actually knew, and how much ignorance you were operating on for much of your life, and how a lot of your decisions and life experience could have been so much more pleasurable had you found the right people and simply followed their footpath and footsteps and simply replicated their success without overthinking and without living through your experience. In conclusion, men, the burden of performance is yours to carry. You cannot give up, and you should never give in to the sloth, laziness, or any of the woke ideologies that we see these days. You must maintain that masculine frame, always. Now, I hope it's been useful.